Lambert affirmative, Bob Michelle. Lambert affirms contention what is political capital vote the national debate over Article 9 wastes political capital. Fiat ends that overwhelms political barriers. His thoughts in each 17 desire for constitutional revision is cost political capital and left domestication unintended reforms of the tax system and entitlement program requires attention as society continues. The HC system has become unsustainable if not restricted. Without reform, Japan collapses. Commuter 21. The aging of Japan will continue to shrink fiscal space because of the increased cotton deaths and low interest rates will cause the yen to depreciate and Japan will drop out of the developing world. And the government must implement effective fiscal measures sooner rather than later to avert poverty. Affirm contention 2 is the United Nations Security Council. Shin and 05 finds that Japan has wanted a permanent seat in Article 9 prevents Japan from becoming a member as it becomes ambiguous language, makes it unclear whether Japan won't be able to meet its responsibilities. And Patent 10 furthers that Japan, if it revises Article 9, will increase its diplomatic influence under the United Nations mandates and will mark Japan as a new leader. And this is key to pandemic responses. DGPA 05 finds in East Asia diseases are on the rise. Japan's ODA can help curb the spread of pandemics and a strong leadership of Japan is urgently called for to reverse these trends. And RECNA 21 concludes that pandemics and annihilate the human species as a race. Contention 3 is democracy promotion. A report by the Freedom House in 2021 writes that share of countries designated not free has reached its highest level since 2006 and currently Brookings 21 indicates that Japan shares concerns about democratic recession is long pressed to include democracies in Asia's regional architecture. However, HRE 12 furthers that Article 9 inhibits Japanese democracy since setting the limitation of the use of military forces and Japanese resentment towards the military crackdown of pro-democracy governments in Burma and China. However, Pearson 06 explains that military support has substantially improved the democratic standing of states over a 60-year period, and that's crucial as Harper and finds that democracy is less likely to become a failed state or suffer a civil war. 12 writes that civil wars have caused over 16.2 million deaths. Our final argument about averting global unrest. Backlash 22 writes that China will decline due to its lack of resources and risk becoming aggressive to achieve economic goals. This could 20 quantifies that China's economic growth could drop to 1.7% by the 2030s. France 22 furthers that the China of the 2020s will be a country whose coercive capabilities are more intimidating as its economic dynamics and phase. That could be the worst possible combination for the world. Thankfully, revising Article 9 turns China's declining to asylum in a couple of ways. The first is restoring credibility. Goal of 22 finds that with COVID, Afghanistan, tensions to Cuba, Iran, and North Korea, the United States is overstressed, facing too many perceived threats at once. And Truman 22 furthers that the perception of the America is too weird to contain commitments has taken hold with the Chinese leadership. And Courseman 22 finds that the United States needs to exercise strategic triads to balance the spending and create real world strategic partnerships with the allies. Lin 16 finds that the anticipation of a weak response from Japan convinces the Chinese government to advance its interests. Thirdly, secondly is deterrence. Siddhartha 18 explains that Article 9 influences funding restraints and limits contributions of regional security and the defense forces. Effective deterrent only if enemies understand that 14 actually be used. And because of this, Akiyama 21 finds that the frequency of intrusion by Chinese ships into Japanese waters is drastically increasing. Core 21 finds that Japan plays a unique role due to its location and economic powers. Gomez 18 writes that conflict in gray zones the great concern with the possibility that an accidental clash could escalate. Tokyo could deter Chinese overreach only in the afterworld. Finally, bolstering regionalism. Cat 17 explains that ASEAN's weak commitment for security makes it unlikely that the group will be able to tackle open disputes. Siddhartha 18 finds that no single member has the military strength to challenge the PRC. With the Article 9 revision, ASEAN has an opportunity to leverage the one regional power capable of challenging the PRC directly, and that's Japan. Hydra 19 further said with powers like Japan engaging ASEAN members, the emergence of a regional order as opposed to one that is Sino-centric will occur. There are two impacts to solving the overstretch problem. The first is maintaining global commitments. It's Globe 22 writes that pragmatic options to deal with overseas crises have lost credibility and become hard to employ. Bando 22 finds that adjusting foreign policy to reflect available resources is the only way to avoid catastrophic failure. The U.S. is juggling the possibility of at least 4 wars at once by shifting burdens to regional allies. The United States can strengthen the credibility of commitments while accommodating a rising China. This prevents nuclear conflicts. Henderson 17 finds the tension stoked by certain regimes could spark a large-scale war and nuclear exchange could destroy the world. Oh, I have a whole minute left. Second is preventing authoritarianism. As Lucius 21 writes, that a confident CCP seeks to make the world safe for authoritarianism and genocide. Freedom will drop around the world as human rights violations are excused. China has imprisoned more than 1 million people in detention camps. Authoritarian countries will band together to erode human rights. And a report by Freedom House in 2021, as we read at the top, indicates that trend. Lucius concludes that China recently solidified its relationship with Russia and is working with smaller autocratic states, allies that help balance against the CCP to diminish its competence. 30 seconds left to go. Let's go to their case. One, go to the alliance argument. We say that they're subpoint A and subpoint B probably contradict each other because insofar as they blame the United States for the pullout, it's probably not possible for other countries to perceive that Japan is doing it on their own in order to because the US influence is waning. It doesn't make any sense. At that point, we say you can probably turn the argument anyways, because insofar as the US is asking for Japan to revise per the sharp evidence, that means that it actually increases the credibility of both the US alliance and Japan, because one, it means that allies do what the United States tell them to, and two, it means the alliance is adaptable.
Obviously, that last part was not on the doc. It was whatever. If y'all want to see the script's evidence, we can put it in.
Yep.
Yeah, if you can just sauce the evidence, that would be nice.
Gotcha.
Real quick, I didn't catch your signposting. Was the stuff you did, the little mini rebuttal, was that in response to their C3?
Yes.
Okay.
The alliance argument.
Okay, so Bobby, can you put in scripts or should I?
I can do it.
Okay, sounds good. Actually, I got it. I think I'll do it faster than you. I got this.
Got it.
Okay.
This is this, right?
You do it. Yeah, that's fine.
Cool.
Let's put it at the top bottom of our docs. It's just there. That's faster than an email.
This one? Yeah, TOC quarters,
TOC
right?
quarters. Put it at the bottom of the doc.
Just so it's there. Just put it at the top. Sorry.
Okay. Okay, that's fine. Okay, script.
Cool. You ready for cross?
Let me just get
Yeah,
the email
once
first.
Sully
then,
gets the
so-
evidence,
Oh,
we'll
I
start
I
this.
just pasted the card at the top of our doc.
Oh,
Oh,
okay,
okay.
okay.
That's fine. Yeah. Ken, first question.
Mhm.
So at the time now, let's talk about, I guess, your third argument on democracy, right?
Yeah.
Why can't Japan do, for example, peacekeeping operations through the UN to once again combat this democratic backsliding in these other countries, as you say?
Because Article 9 prevents any sort of like.
Wait, but they can do peacekeeping operations, for example, through UN endeavors. So why doesn't that solve that?
Actually, no, they can't. I forget what piece of evidence this is. I mean, if you really want to press this, we will. Actually, we'll read the evidence in rebuttal. But one, I'm like just pretty sure that they legally can't. And two, I would say that probably makes sense, especially considering the fact that like it still is an exertion of their military. But three, I'd say that there's probably a political incentive not to do it in the negative world, because regardless of whether it's legal or not, that definitely seems like a huge contradiction to the Constitution, which probably would, be bad for politicians. So I'd say probably in the neg world, they don't have it like as much of a reason to, nor do I think they legally can. We'll double check if you make that argument in rebuttal. With that, let's like go look at your C1. I'm a little confused. What does Japan use foreign aid for specifically, other than just like soft power?
For example, diplomacy, influencing development in developing countries. Like, you know what foreign aid is. It's
I
to
do.
assist developing countries in their economic development, for example.
So let's look at that first point you make real quick. You say it's for diplomacy and influence. How do you like why does aid go away as a tool for diplomacy and
Because
influence?
now, because foreign aid costs them billions and billions of dollars. Now that the EU revised Article 9 and they have a military on hand, there's no longer an incentive to use soft power. There's no longer an incentive to use diplomacy. Instead, they use their military and use hard power.
But the US is the largest contributor to foreign aid, and we also have the largest military.
Yes, but specifically, we say that in Japan's instance, what?
What?
Yeah,
Yeah,
we
so
say
I'm
this.
asking why Japan?
Why Japan?
Like why
Once again,
why is Japan unique? Why are
because
they?
Yeah, because right now, as soon as they start developing their military, that's what's allowing them to like switch over to hard power.
Wait, but that's
That
my
much.
question though, right? Is like I think you have an incentive to do both because aid doesn't always, effectively.
Well, not necessarily, because we still say that in Japan's scenario, Japan, like it costs a lot on their budget and economic, like I guess their economy in general, just because they're spending billions of dollars on foreign aid. It's way cheaper for them and it's way easier for them to use that hard power. That's what our evidence says. Can I have a question? We've been on this for a minute 30.
Yeah, go for it.
Okay, so let's talk about your argument on UN Security Council, right? Why can't China just veto their membership?
Well, I'd say that one, in the affirmative world, they probably have like more leverage to help convince China to let them on. But two, regardless
So
of
what do you mean by leverage? Just because they have a military?
so real quick, two, if they have, it doesn't matter whether China lets them on officially or not. We'd say that the evidence is probably conducive to this as well, that as long as they have more leadership power within the UN, whether it's on the council or not, they're able to more effectively lead peacekeeping operations and stuff like that and pandemic response. Y'all need prep?
Yeah, let me just start some time. Yeah, well, you ready? Okay, well, we'll just start now.
That's 12 seconds.
I will just send a speech doc. Okay. Yeah. Let me know when y'all get that. And I'll just start by frontlining their case, and I'll tell you if I added anything or didn't read anything on the doc at the end of my speech.
Are you starting on your case or their case?
Starting on my case, just starting on the responses on C3.
Yeah.
Right. If everybody is good. All right. Let's begin Now, on our contention theory, they say it contradict. No, just two different scenarios. Countries can respond in different ways. It's the same means again. They say that it increases the U.S. and Japan, but our evidence says since they are against Japanese revision, if the U.S. supports it, they are against the U.S. At that point, go to reform. 3 responses. 1, there's no uniqueness time frame. Japan can just pursue economic reforms. They read no evidence indicating they can't. 2nd, you can turn it. Revision causes mass unrest. Period 21 explains that amendments will be plunged to Japan into a divisive debate provoking large-scale demonstrations. This spills over the balance as Taipei times 09 concludes a debate about whether Japan should acquire a turn of its own would cause riots in the streets and bring down a government, kills civil war, kills millions, collapse the government, making the AF impossible. It also means cooperation can't happen in deterrence. Then thirdly, you can turn it again because Richter writes a new legislation passed by the Japanese politicians to send troops abroad is time consuming and comes with expensive great political capital, and you can turn the link. Then on the UN 3 responses. 1, there's no link. Article 9 is in key. Mano 07 explains Japan has already contributed more than most UNC members there exist. No reason Japan should revise Article 9 to perform a meaningful role. Japan's financial and logistic aid becomes significant. 2nd, turn it. Japan's unique role in the UNSC EPS 89 revision is still preventing conflict. Monio 7 further because it's passed its constitution. Japan can play intense weight on diplomacy for establishing regional conflicts instead of resorting to force. Thirdly, there's no link because of Chinese veto. Harrison 14 finds the powers permanent membership would refer Tokyo and anathema to Beijing's interest as permanent member to wield a veto over proposals to alter its composition. Their impact evidence is from 2005. There's no been impact for that yet. There's no been East Asian pandemic. And secondly, their evidence is from the DPJ, just a political party saying what Japan should do. Nothing at all. On democracy, 5 responses. 1, their link evidence is our evidence on foreign aid. It says that instead of doing foreign intervention, Japan uses developmental assistance to achieve the same goals about democracy. 2nd, their evidence is that absence of Japanese intervention in the 1980s caused U.S. media backlash, not a conflict in Burma. 3rd, their evidence isolates Japan would increase UN peacekeeping. This is bad because Government 13 explains intervening states would justify use of force, demonize the regime when they're targeting. This inhibits interveners from considering a negotiated settlement that would be the quickest way to end violence. That is why Lin 13 indicates that out of in 286 days of foreign intervention, foreign occupiers result in 59% reduction in likelihood of victory. 4thly, Kelly writes that despite Article 9, Japan has already a large military already does UN peacekeeping work in places like Cambodia. Then 5thly, there's a DA on nationalism. Rodriguez 21 writes that the rebuilt to push Japan's military would embolden the Japanese far right as well. Nationalism sentiment is articulated frequently demand for remilitarization. Burger 14 confirms historically whenever Japan is more in defense, conservatives have pushed hard to strengthen nationalism. Overall, Horning 18 concludes any effort to revise or return to the 1930s Japan capable of unleashing its military overseas. Links to all our wars turns their case because we tell you Japan is the key to preventing democratic backsliding if they go authoritarian. Turns the link also turns all their case because if there's no one if it's authoritarian, there's no incentive for diplomacy or deterrence and alternate like Japan. Thus, they want to deter adversaries just going to aggress and destroy any chance at regional cooperation. Specifically, with that said, go to their last contention talking about the U.S. The top 2 unique responses. 1, Corbyn from March indicates that Biden has sought to empower key allies to contribute to collective bargaining in the Indo-Pacific. And DA Hill 22 confirms Ukraine has spurred Washington's closest allies in Asia to harden against China. Secondly, China can't respond as Yang 22 writes that Beijing cultivated an opposition to itself. Asia will increasingly become more unified against China. China can't disrupt the status quo without consequence. Siegel 05 confirms China's primary goal is economic development. In spite of flex, like China will avoid military competition with Japan. On link 1 on overstretch, 2 responses. 1, no link but can spend it definitely. Hensman 05 explains the large reserve currencies have been a credit card. When the bills come due, the U.S. borrows and prints money to pay them with a little constraint on maintaining its military dominance. Empirics proof, as Bolton 22 explains Biden's budget in military spending is increasing to 813 billion. Second, consider revision causes America to double down. As Klinger 20 explains, Japan remains restricted to operations that are strictly defensive, easing constraints throughout the U.S. Push Tokyo to pass its comfort zone in the alliance. War 22 contextualizes Japan is open to hosting American missiles, but the politics are tough because Japan's passed its constitution. On deterrence, 3 responses. 1, BMDs. Roger 2019 argues that Japan desires deterrent. The BMD should suffice. The country's BMD system has deterred any attacks to 8 seconds perceptions. Anthony 02 writes any change in Article 9 would be immediately be perceived, and Beijing is a clear signal that Japan has succumbed to nationalist forces. And Harding 20 further, China may incentives to preemptively attack Japan. Turn and affirming causes conflict for North Korea. Sharon 916 writes given Pyongyang's history of perceiving any Japanese movement as existential threat offensive, Japan may push Kim Jong-un to nuclear preemptive strike for this on time frame because even if Japan develops deterrence, it would take years for the signal revision is an immediate threat. That's why Rogers 19 confirms in the event of larger budget has passed the boil plus bill span a decade. On regionalism, 2 responses. 1, it's not unique because Harold 19 writes Japan's defense cooperation serves to raise the cost of dissuade China from thinking it worse. That is why Yaguchi 22 finds Japan is suspending security cooperation now. Then you can turn it from reasons cooperation versus angering neighbors. ISTP 18 writes an amendment of Article 9 ignite protest among neighbors due to the historical association of Japanese imperialism. Second is limiting diplomacy. IED Law 8 writes Article 9 prohibits forced to settle international disputes if this played an important role in establishing trust between Japan and the region. And lastly is public opposition. Perry 22 writes amendments to plunge Japan into bitterly divisive debate provoking large-scale demonstrations. Sterling 20 writes would lead to confusion with the international system. That's me the gate. I didn't read the last cooperation turn. The Russia and China turn on deterrence and the short circuit. Everything else I read. So I didn't read the the 2 Showen turns, the Hornet, short circuit, and the last thing on cooperation.
Okay, sounds good. Cool. Bobby, can I have where's my phone, bro? Oh, here, my bad, it's in my pocket. Cool. We're gonna run prep really quickly then. Starting. Cool. Starting. Sorry, I forgot to
20
unmute.
seconds.
That was 23 seconds. Cool. It's just gonna go frontlining their case.
Can we have a speech doc on our case?
Completely off my flow, so feel free to call for any cards afterwards. If I read off the doc, I'd totally send it.
Okay.
Cool. Okay. Yeah, cool. Okay. Start on the political capital argument. The only thing they read is that revisions cause unrest, but all of that should have happened during Article 9, given that was the biggest political shift then. We see the part the revision didn't cause it, or sorry, the reinterpretation didn't cause, there's no warrant as to why the revision would, but then we say that the Japanese troops sending politicians abroad isn't time consuming because we say the debates happen over a longer period of time and take a bunch of political capital. Once a decision is done, it's done there. We say that there's more room now because sending troops isn't as controversial. Go to the UNSC argument. We'll like bite the dealing that China veto doesn't really matter. At that point, the terms don't really matter either because they don't really win as to why Japan would no longer want to promote pacifism insofar as promotes peace. Go to the argument on China. They say a couple of things. Democracy. They say a couple of things. They say one, that they would just like increase peacekeeping operations, but they can't do that because insofar as conflict starts to happen, that means they have to immediately pull out, which is why they can't keep troops in the region. On the nationalism turn, we say one, Article 9 reintervention should have caused all the nationalism spike to increase, but insofar as it didn't, and literally no other country attacked or aggressed after trying to disprove their link. But then second, we say that they won't double down because insofar as the Komodo party, which is key to the votes of the whatever it's called, the LDP party, they will balance out the need for nationalism, which is really important because that means they have to appease those voters, which is why they will never actually do anything after the first revision of Article 9. But they go to the China argument at the top front. They said, well, they said that one, China is like not aggressing right now, and they said that China can't offer to expand militarily. But we say it's not about them expanding or going to war. Argument is about conflict. We said that simply they're doing global military escalation as well as pushing their soft power and hard power because they're unchecked in the region. We think as far as we find a way to check them and counterbalance them, that's also all their impact scenarios. Both the responses are fundamentally the same. Then on the credibility link, they said the U.S. would double down. We say no, they wouldn't, because the reasons to why they wouldn't double down is because if anything, we say we said that Japan filling in would check even if they did double down. The terms don't really have any impact on the deterrence argument on BMDs. BMDs don't solve for other allies believing anything. We say insofar as China knows that there's no chance of Japan actually like exerting their influence on anyone else, they're not really afraid. Then on the argument of China aggression, we say there's no warrant as to why China would aggress insofar as the cost of war goes up and it becomes harder for them to go to conflict. On the 10 years warrant, we say Japan would just reposture their military. It's not going to cost that much. Finally, on the allies debate, you can group all the charges. The references are the same. You don't really fear them. More responses on their case. Go to Oh yeah, also Biden's not seeking alliance right now. Their argument is completely hypothetical. The global evidence gives you actual implications of how the United States credibility is declining, and more importantly, our evidence is that China's perception is that Biden is declining. That's key because China's perception is what matters. Go to the political capital argument. Or not political capital, what did they even read at the top? Oh yeah, on foreign aid. One, the year 12 evidence is really good in explaining that government official, because Japan gives the evidence, it gives foreign aid to actual governments, corruption increases by 2% for every 1% increase in foreign aid. Secondly, Johnson evidence further arguments as the country goes up by 90% because the aid just goes into the hands of terrorists. That's really important because that means they increase the probability of it. Also, there's literally no warrants why other allies can't just step in. We said that their evidence about technical assistance can still be done by other countries. Go to Star Wars. We say one, their own evidence talks about how China and Russia are also militarizing in space. That's important because their internal link evidence on miscalc is not specific to Japan. That means the miscalc can still happen no matter what. Second, the found 20 evidence that they read specifically says that Japan could also just increase defensive capacity. And we say we prefer this because the diplomat evidence is right on the status quo. They're trying to increase their defensive engagement in space. There's no warrant as to why they want to become offensive insofar as that they know they're going to get destroyed by a country like China. Insofar as all that's true, their arguments are non-unique anyway, or we say they just go defensive. Then onto the blame game argument. We say one at the top, other countries still value other U.S. commitments like economic assistance. The fact they're like really important with the nuclear guarantee. There's no warrant. They would why turn all of that away insofar as Japan aggresses. They don't read a warrant as to why Japan becomes aggressive, which means that U.S. credibility inherently does decline because Japan doesn't do anything to hurt other countries. Perception of imperialism doesn't matter because countries don't act on impulse. We think insofar as Japan literally doesn't do anything. There's no warrant to destroy their entire relationship with the United States. The majority of these countries depend on. But then third, you can turn the argument against them because the Doris evidence explains that if anything, interoperability with the United States goes up because Japan has the capacity to actually work with the United States and build a better military. That's really important because insofar as interoperability goes up, not only does U.S. credit get reinstored, but on top of that, it checks all their warrants about the alliance system falling apart. But go to the actual impact scenario. We think the alliance system doesn't fall apart because not only is credit declining, now making their entire argument non-unique, but because countries will never actually develop nuclear weapons because if they know that the United States nuclear guarantee has no reason to disappear, that checks the argument as to why they would like never need anything. But on top of that, we said the U.S. alliance system doesn't fundamentally matter if Japan is going to check it anyway. Go to their modeling argument. One at the top, like the sharp 20 event says that an arms race is already happening. The warrant as to why conflict decreases because countries can build arms, what they literally are, which proves their link. But then second, we said there's no reason as to why countries want to follow Japan or even remove the fact that they didn't really revise their constitution to begin with. There's no warrant as to why if their entire modeling system is working, they wouldn't just continue to choose peace. But then finally, the revision spiral argument, we say one at the very top, their evidence literally just says, well, the richer evidence says that you need a 2/3 majority to put anything into action. Their argument is literally just about some guy saying that we should revise everything, not that the actual Japanese constitution works that way.
Can we just see the impact turns on foreign aid and were they specific to Japan?
The impact turns, no, they weren't. I just did analysis as to Japan.
Oh, okay.
I can send you the impact turns though.
Can you send that revised Article 9, something will balance out the nationalism? Those are from
That was analytical. I can,
Okay.
yeah, if you want, I can send you like that Japan works with the Kimoto party for votes, but like the actual term.
No, yeah, that's fine.
Okay, sounds
Let's see if
good.
I need anything else. Oh yeah,
So
can
did
you
you guys want
repeat?
the aid stuff or not?
No, can you repeat the you said you group are the terms on racialism? I didn't catch your front line. Could you repeat that real quick?
Yeah, definitely. It's just that because the threat perceptions against North Korea and China align, those are always going to be biggest existential threats, which is why countries work with the Japan felon insofar as Japan doesn't aggress.
Okay. So you want to take prep? Okay. I'll hold on my timer to show when we start. That was 45.
All right.
Sorry, really quickly, between before rebuttal and now, how much total prep was that?
203 left.
203. Sounds good. That makes sense to me.
Okay. Can I have first question?
You're muted.
Wait, can we shoot, heck. Sorry about that. Bobby muted my laptop because he thought we were going to summary, and that's totally our bad. I'm totally good for cross-selling. You can take the first question.
Okay, so a lot of your front lines in your rebuttal are contingent on the idea that reinterpretation, didn't result in our DA's returns manifesting. What was the reinterpretation on 2014 about?
Okay, so one, I don't think any. I think that I said it, but all my front lines are not contingent on that. It's probably a bit of an exaggeration.
Well, yeah, it
but
wasn't.
even
I'm
so,
not saying all of them. I'm saying
yeah.
a good amount. But anyway, yeah.
Yeah, so it basically established things like the idea that it just basically loosened what Japan could do with their military, and under certain caveats did this. But I think the key important thing that's sort of important with my frontlining is that a lot of my arguments are about the political and perceptual shift that it causes, because that's what a lot of your arguments are about. Your arguments are about how allies see, oh, we're going back to imperialism, nationalism, because Japan is doing this little thing, right, with their politics. So we say that was the biggest political shift of its time, and as for your perception warrants, that should have happened.
Well, you see, you're kind of tiptoeing around what it was. The reinterpretation was just allowing Japan to engage in more collective defense if it feels it's existentially threatened. All of the warrants we read into our case about perception is them thinking Japan is going to militarize or offensively attack. But the reinterpretation, you can look at the context, you can look at the bill that was passed to the Japanese Diet, is only about increasing collective defense in the event that Japan's well-being is existentially threatened. All the warrants we also read of the turns are as to why the population is against offensive capabilities or offensive rearmament, or why countries around the world are against Japanese offensive rearmament. So even though it was a massive political change, it wasn't the political change that our perception links are triggered by. But
okay, awesome, Sally. You just kind of gave a speech, so I'm gonna clarify some
I
stuff.
was just responding to the speech you gave. So
okay, sure. So let's talk about your actual arguments, right? Let's take nationalism, for example. Your argument is very much so largely on the idea that conservatives get more power and that the far right gets emboldened. If it's true that the far right got its biggest sort of political victory at that time period, obviously the reinterpretation isn't the same thing as Article 9. I'm not gonna BS you and tell you it is, but it's true that at the time it was the biggest political shift. So they should have gotten that emboldenment. So I'm really confused as to why there wasn't some massive surge of nationalism that happened.
It's the exact same warrant we explained. It was only about collective defense, right? So there wasn't that large scale bright line. Our evidence still isolates that specifically. Whenever there's been an increase in defense policy like that, there's been an increase in nationalism. The bright line is revision. The evidence you read at the bottom indicates that since it's a revision into offensive weapons, which, for example, 77% of the LDP party supports for revision, it will ultimately lead to a return to 1930s Japan where they can increase.
But that just is kind of like an extension of your turn. You didn't really interact with what I said, right? Because
I did.
Your turn is about the increase of national sentiment based on the fact that they win some. Yeah, no, that's fine. Based on the fact that listen.
Yeah.
It's fine if your evidence says revision, but the warrant it gives is that they got sort of like got a political win, right? So I think the warrant that your evidence gives is important, that they got a political win before as well. So my question is, why didn't we see literally any sort of
the political win
about?
our evidence isolates in the warrant is full revision and offensive capabilities.
No,
that's the
fine,
warrant.
But you're not contesting that it also applies there. But anyway, cool. Summary
that's
time.
why we read the empiric. Yeah.
We'll run some.
Hi, besties. I think that might be prep.
Nope, they have the.
Sorry, we got 106 right now. We had in total 203 seconds left. If that's cool with everyone, then we'll keep running.
Yeah, I thought you said last time you have 203 left, not use 203, right?
Yeah, 203 left.
Right. So you
sorry for the confusion. 203 left.
That's my bad. That's my bad.
Okay, no, you're good. So 106 used in total. We had 203 left. We're going to continue running that starting.
Hongster, you're muted, by the way.
Oh, sorry. I said we use 145. So that's 18 seconds of perp left. All right, let me write that down real quick. Okay.
Wait, I think a judge just disconnected.
I guess we will just wait for Alex to come back.
Sorry, I accidentally hit the wrong button on my computer and it kicked me out of all of the programs I was on.
You're good. So
Give me like 2 seconds to pull my ballot back up and then I should be good to go.
okay.
Okay, y'all should be good.
Yeah. So order my speech is going to be starting on the neg, weighing, and half. Very simple. Starting on the turns in foreign aid. If everyone's ready, then we'll begin. Group all the journals in foreign aid. Our impact evidence says that proves that aid has positive effects, and Okinawa 15 confirms that in all ODA projects, Japan oversees the process closely to ensure the proper use of its contribution. They fully concede the hard power link on foreign aid, extend only the link. We said the revision will remove Japan's incentive to carry out a foreign aid drive diplomacy, allowing it to abuse its military to achieve hard power foreign policy goals. This turns their case because Japan has zero incentive for diplomacy in the act, meaning that cooperation decreases, which prevents countering China, means that they do military interventions and ruins countries and democracy. The hard power link on foreign aid goes fully conceded, but we're collapsing collapsing. On our last argument on revision spiral, extend the argument. We said since all constitutional amendments are interconnected, revision would necessitate constitutional-wide amendments that would be hijacked by Japan's nationalist LDP, implementing policies that would turn Japan authoritarian. Since Japan sees in democracy stands as a global litmus test, revision triggers a global authoritarian shift that risks millions of lives through WMD proliferation. The only response is that you need 2/3 majority. One, this was over time. Two, our evidence says that in order to revise one, you got to revise all, so you feel all of them get amended. But third of all, our evidence indicates that the nationalists can easily circumvent the restrictions because they have power. Also, quickly on the security guarantee turn, one, we'd say that even if the bilateral relationship between Japan and the United States increases, all other allies perceive the U.S. credibility is decreasing, so there's no offense off the turn. Then, at that point, let's do the weighing. We outweigh in three major ways. First, the prerequisite. We say that authoritarian shift causes WMD proliferation and terrorism. Both existential threats mean that they can't spread democracy, and countries don't want to cooperate with them and makes Japan more aggressive, triggering conflict. Second is another prerequisite. Worldwide authoritarian spread means that U.S. influence collapses globally, turning their C3 and outweighing on skill because our link is global and theirs is only about Asia. Third of all, we short circuit because our revision spiral link happens during the revision process, meaning that all of the offense we garner comes before all of their links on post revision. At that point, let's go to their case. At the top, the civil war turn is so clean. We say that affirming creates civil unrest because there's disagreement in Japan over whether or not to revise Article 9. This causes civil war through ultimately leading up to protests, killing millions of people. This prerequisite their argument is we'd say that in the entire Japan is in civil war. There's no deterrence and no cooperation. They just say it should have triggered during reinterpretation. No, the reinterpretation about collective defense. That's why they didn't trigger, but a full-on revised revision will trigger the turn. Then go to their argument, extend the emboldening nationalists. We say that revised Article 9 would embolden nationalists because you're building up in military, so that create propaganda and rhetoric to embolden the nationalists. They conceded the two implications, saying that if the entire country is nationalist, there will be no deterrence. It would have, if anything, cause escalation because other countries are insecure, and there will be no cooperation. They said that reinterpretation didn't increase nationalism. Yes, it did. The only reason why there wasn't a full-on, the only reason why the entire country didn't go nationalist was because it wasn't a full-on revision. But second, they say that it will balance out nationalism. There's complete assertion, no evidence, and no warranting why. Then go on and they concede already that Japan is already doing defensive cooperation right now in the status quo, which is already deterring China. They also may settle the fact that evidence is so specific that Western influence from Biden is already deterring China. That's why our uniqueness evidence, which is the most recent, says that China will not do a war because they want to focus on economic policy. Then extend the turn on preemptive strike. China sees Japan as an existential threat when they develop weapons. That's why they'll preemptively strike this out with some time frame because this happens immediately. And they don't care about the cost of war after you revise because it's an existential threat. Finally, they can see the term angry neighbors. Other countries don't want Japan to develop weapons that destroy relations.
Okay, really cool. So I think we ran 23 seconds earlier, but before we run prep, Bobby and I are just gonna quickly switch our microphones so that he can hear summary.
You good?
Cool, yeah.
Oh yeah. Sorry.
I'm sorry, let me just quickly see if I need any evidence. I thought there was one thing I needed. Never mind, I can't find it, so I guess not. That's fine. It's just gonna go prep then. So
Cool.
resume prep starting now.
Correct me if I'm wrong. Like,
Yep.
that's-
Yep. We're good. Huh? Yeah, no. Cool. So, do I have my docs? Are they gonna load for me? Sorry, Google Docs is being awful.
Just refresh the page, it'll work. That happened to me too for like 5 seconds.
Okay.
there.
I think we're good then. Order of the speech. I guess we'll go foreign aid. Actually, yeah, foreign aid, our case, weighing, neg. So start on foreign aid, I'll sign post. Is anybody not ready? All right. Cool. Start on the foreign aid argument. This is incredibly, this is not a voter in any way because one, they don't tell you what the scope of the argument is. It's a couple of countries that they give aid to. Two, they don't contextualize what that means in terms of no longer having aid or democratic influence on these countries, which means that there's no internal link back into the democracy promotion. And three, they didn't tell you how it actually links into genocide. That's important later. Like this argument is so uncontextualized and so such a small scope, it's hard to vote here. With that, you can go over to our argument. We're going to be going for authoritarianism. We make it pretty damn clear that from Cuba to Ukraine to Afghanistan, and the United States is fundamentally overstretched, giving regimes in like China to use force, right? Arguing about U.S. credibility, but the credibility of defending democracies. You know that if we set a bad example and China is able to spread authoritarian goals unchecked, it spreads the message that authoritarianism and more specifically genocide is a viable option on the world stage. Considering that one, this is already happening in Asia right now in terms of like Laos, Cambodia, right, Myanmar, they're all making general transitions over to China. But two, more importantly, that because China's getting away with the genocide and there's not a military power like Japan able to check them, and that green lights genocide to these other countries, which means that trend continues to spread like it did in Myanmar in 2017. They make you a couple of responses off the top. They give you the Civil War turn. We say that this argument is incredibly non-sexual, not a voter insofar as they don't give you the link between protests happening and a civil war, and that's the collapse of Japan. The warrant is not there. You don't vote on the argument. Protests don't cause civil war. Two, they tell you that they are going to be emboldening nationalists. They concede Varnica's frontline this on that the Komodo response is conceded that insofar as the LDP, the Nationalist Party, needs to like a Komodo who is still in support of pacifism, whether Article 9 passes or not, and they're the ones that get like the general population vote. They'll never be able to switch too far over to the right in terms of nationalism because they always have to like apply to peace and pacifism. That's not how political capital works. Three, they say Japan, the defense is like happening now. So is the United States. One, our evidence isn't about war, so they don't necessarily co-opt it. Two, we say China's perception is the one that matters, and China perceives the United States as weakening and Japan not doing anything, which means that they're the ones that continue to the genocide. But three, we say that the Golub evidence is really specific. It's clearly not working. Four, they tell you that China is going to preemptively strike. There literally is not a warrant in the summary as to why it's an existential threat or why they do it. Don't look at they'll get them away with saying like, oh, our evidence says that. Finally, they tell you that other allies are going to be turning away with Japan. One, they literally do not tell you who, but two, we say that if they probably choose Japan over because they're threat security like alliances, even if they're a little mad that Japan revises insofar as they think that China or North Korea has actually threatened them before is a bigger threat. With that, go to the way. Yeah. Oh, but we say that if anything, the cost of war goes up on China, like in the affirmative world. With that, which means they're less likely to go to war. Go to the Wang. We say that you can call up all of their offense on like the general Wang they do about like authoritarianism. We say that our model, it doesn't matter if authoritarianism in general spreads, and so far as our model specifically links into genocide, right? We say that the genocide is what's getting away with now. We say you prefer genocide over the general impact of authoritarianism because we say that like genocide happens under the cover of the state. Comparatively, authoritarianism is pretty easy to spot. So it like people are always going to be able to get away with genocide if you allow it to continue as a trend. But authoritarianism exists, and like generally speaking, with that, we can go over to their case. Their arguments are once again pretty damn hyperbolic, and they miss a lot of Varnica's responses. Read their evidence on it. All of the Constitution would have to be stripped away. It says that one, only politically, in order for it to be politically effective, that these constitutions have to be stripped away. But one, they've conceded that you need a popular vote of nearly 2/3 of all the people, to pass it, which means for each individual contention, they don't get to fiat all of them going away. But two, we also know that like that's how political capital works. When you make one concession, you have to like give away in the future.
Okay.
Cool. Y'all ready for Graham?
Yeah. For the time now, what is the link as to how China committing a genocide means that when China spreads this authoritarianism, all these other countries like Laos and Thailand, as you say, will also do genocide?
Yeah.
Okay, so here's the premise of our argument. It's not that like China goes into them and says something and does something. It's what Bobby explains to you in summary, and what our case entails is that because countries look up and they're like, yo, China's getting away with genociding and oppressing literally 1 million people for their political benefit. They're getting away with low-level military excursions that lead to human rights abuses, and they're fundamentally sort of getting away with whatever they want. We think we can do that too, and that's what our impact have been sort of contextual.
So can you name me? Yeah, can you name me one country that has been influenced by China and is also committing a genocide right now because they see China do a genocide? And they're like,
one, the diamond evidence is pretty good. I think it's like Laos, Vietnam, Thailand. But two, specifically, and I gave this example in summary as well, just because I knew you're going to ask for it. I think Myanmar had a genocide in 2017. The evidence is also specific that the United States has pretty much failed a response to like the Asian genocides.
And what Bobby also explains is it's like not even about like averting like a genocide like today. Like one, we definitely counterbalance the China genocide happening now, call them out, help shut that down. But it's not even about like the one thing happening today. It's the fact that it says that general trend over time that's okay to happen, which is also what we saw when there was a decline in the past. So we say that insofar as we sort of co-opt that time frame, that's what's really important.
But how does deterring China from like patrolling the East China Sea suddenly stop China from doing genocide, which sets a precedent across the world?
That internal link just like wasn't extended. Like you just
it absolutely was. You prove that you deter China. There is no war, but you don't.
Do you want us to explain? Yeah, we'll explain.
So the idea isn't that like the only thing Japan does isn't just like patrol the South China Sea. What Bobby like very explicitly like it's on like what very explicitly tells you is that because Japan is one of the oldest democracies in the United States in the Asia Pacific region, and they've consistently sort of shown advocacy towards these types of things, then because they're willing to counter.
That's our exact internal link we extend. Wait, really quickly.
There's a second warrant there.
Really quickly.
Can you let her finish? She'll explain the second.
Sure. I just want to point something out, but yeah, sure.
I know you're going to say that means you link in, but
no, that's not what I was going to say. But
a model other than the authoritarian genocide that China's doing is going to be successful and will get away. Like when Japan's able to step in and say, hey, like this is not what's happening anymore, then like that sets the precedent.
But there's two things, right?
The second one,
that's our warranting we read in our case. That evidence says that Japan is currently preventing democratic backsliding by being the oldest democracy. Like that internal link you extend is about the status quo.
Give them credibility.
Let's
our argument is that the lack of credibility now is why they're not effective.
Also, let's be really, really clear. We're the only one that actually contests the contextualization of the uniqueness here. We give you several countries that are backsliding. We gave you genocide in Myanmar in 2017. You do not in any way tell us how we've actually seen democracies being offended, which means we're ahead on the uniqueness.
And the warrants. That's cross.
Okay. We have, I think it's 18 seconds left. Once again, I'll hold my timer. So only make sure to, we're going to start. Okay, we're
Dota's just going to be weighing our case there. Okay, so everybody ready? All right. Okay. Yeah, let me just get my timer ready. Okay, let's begin now. The easiest place to wait is on the short circuit. Our revision spiral link happens during the revision process, meaning all of the offense we garner off it comes before the links on post-revision. Their internal link into genocide is authoritarianism, meaning we link in. They concede in every speech from our extension that Japanese democracy now prevents democratic backsliding. Vietnam and these other countries aren't doing a genocide. Their only example is Myanmar. But our evidence indicates that Japan prevents an entire global authoritarian shift. Our argument is larger, even if they can prove 3 countries in Asia. Our link, what happens when you affirm, is an entire global authoritarian shift, meaning we outweigh on scope there. Their uniqueness debate does not matter in that instance. At this point, extend revision spiral. Since all constitutional clauses are interconnected, revision would necessitate constitution-wide amendments that would be hijacked by Japan's nationalist LDP implementing policies would turn Japan authoritarian. Since Japan sees in democracy as a global litmus test, revision triggers a global authoritarian shift that causes WMD proliferation and terrorism, both existential threats. Their responses are over time. They first say that there's it says it should. No, the evidence says since all constitution and clauses are interconnected, they have to revise all, which is why Gordon concludes it would lead to conservatives pushing through authoritarian policy. They say that 2/3. Again, over time, our evidence says that in Japan, the national nationalists once they get power, and when you affirm can just circumvent these government restrictions. Lastly, extend foreign aid. The link we go for isn't contingent on impact contextualization. It's about hard power revision to remove Japan's incentive to carry out foreign aid, drive diplomacy, allowing it to use military to achieve hard power foreign policy goals. This turns their case because Japan's zero incentive for diplomacy and that means cooperation decreases, which prevents countering China's terminal defense to their case and unresponded to. We are clearly winning the Wang because our link is global, meaning their contextualization does not matter. We're also winning their case. Remember, our evidence says that US and Japan is doing cooperation right now, which is why our evidence says Western influence is increasing. The most recent. Secondly, remember the Civil War turn. Our evidence says since countries are directly against offensive capabilities, the firm would cause massive riots in the streets, which would collapse the Japanese government and lead to a civil war. That internal link is there, which prevents any cooperation or countering China because if Japan has collapsed, as per their warrant, is a democratic country. That also means it's authoritarian globally. Lastly, the preemptive strike evidence is so clean. It says that since China thinks Japanese militarization is an existential threat, they preemptively strike Japan, which again prevents any cooperation. There's no warrant as to why Japan increasing military prevents all of this authoritarianism. Very undercovered, but for the neg.
I'm gonna start with
My bad.
sorry about that. I'm gonna start with like all these random turns, go to the Wang debate, then go to our case. Cool. Sounds good. Is everyone ready? Okay.
Can I order one?
Yes. It's just gonna start like on like foreign aid, protest, nationalism, preemptive strike. They'll turn Sully red. Then their case, our case to the end. Is everyone ready? Okay, and then I'll weigh definitely. Foreign aid literally doesn't matter. The only impact that theory is diplomacy doesn't happen, but our internal link is not diplomacy. It's simply the idea that Japan is willing to counterbalance anti-democratic regimes. They can see that Japan has the willingness to do that. So it doesn't matter if they like work together with countries. That literally doesn't matter. Even beyond that, literally do not explain why the incentive goes away for soft power. Without incentive extension, none of you judges should be voting on this. Go to the protest warrant. They said, well, riots risk collapse, but there's literally no warrants why a riot leads to a civil war, given all the steps that happen in between. But even on that, the concession of the Komodo Party evidence is really important because we say insofar as these nationalists need to appeal to the Komodo Party, those votes are also really key. That just explains how, because these nationalists will have to appeal to them, there's no reason why protests happen and it'll be bipartisan. But even beyond that, like we win on like fiat means we automatically get it anyway. Go to this China, and also it's like really badly impacted. They just mean that like Japan's going to collapse, no time problem on this. You don't know when it happens. We say that like other intervening factors check. And this is linked to genocide, which completely takes out the argument. On the preemptive strike thing, they can see that the cost of war goes up. China's not going to get into a battle if they can't win. It's not politically effective. There's no response to Sully's final focus. You flow it through completely. And this is the U.S.-Western alliances should check our argument. But remember, Bobby gives you contextualization. And not only China's perception, not that now, because he's pulling out, don't let Sully's assertion get away with it. With that, let's actually extend the Wang debate. We said that genocide comes before literally anything else they talk about. The Wang doesn't matter for that Sully reads because he does not explain why the Japanese model promotes genocide. We say China is getting away with a genocide right now, which is why the Chinese model does promote genocide. That's really important because when he reads this time frame Wing on the revision process, what it literally doesn't matter. We still access the same amount of scope, but there's no real extension as to why the revision process means that it happens instantaneously. Like there's no warrant as to why authoritarianism happens instantaneously. With the revision takes time to get past, which is why it doesn't matter. Extend case that we say insofar as right now the U.S. credibility is declining and China's they're able to spread authority and influence into other countries and show other countries that hey, we can get away with genocide. So can you? That's really important because countries like other than Myanmar, Laos, Thailand, Vietnam, all these other countries are also following the influence. It's really important because we say that means in the future they can get away with things like genocide. We literally saw it happen in the past with Myanmar when we revised Article 9 to counterbalancing towards China's effect, which means that Japan can say, hey, there's an actual better model that you can actually follow, and they do things like actually get involved in counterbalancing the region. At that point, go to their case. Oh, the really big important is that the Japanese constitution, for every single each amendment, you need a 2/3 popular vote. There's no reason why people would vote for Japan to become authoritarian. Like there's no warrant as to why that would get passed. It's game over there.
You're on number.
Good morning, y'all.
Real quick from Brentwood, can I see the evidence that like all of the amendments have to get changed together?
Yeah, I will just send that in the email chain again.
Thank you.
Want us to like highlight in the evidence where we say it doesn't say that?
Like our argument that it's like you need a 2/3 for each
Sure,
amendment.
yes.
Sounds
Okay.
Bobby,
I'll get 2/3 if you can just like show in the card where.
Yeah. That's so funny, Sully. I was looking through your AF doc trying to find this evidence and I was like, dang, it's not even here.
Yeah, so what I'm setting now is the evidence about all interconnected and then conservative revision. And then I'm also just setting the evidence about that says that they circumvent illegal checks like 2/3. So that's all sent in
Only
one
need the
email.
first one, please do not send the second one.
Oh, okay. Sorry, I already sent it. Just the first one's at the top. My bad.
Okay,
It's just Sterling. That's the only one.
Oh, there we go.
And then Lambert, I guess, let me know when you've sent like the recutting.
Yep.
Yeah, so it's not just so the 2/3 thing is what Bobby's sending, and then honestly, like I don't even think it's worth
I
like
do not need 2/3. Please only send the counterclaim to their evidence.
Okay.
the 2/3 thing was like the indictment into their evidence. It wasn't like something like off of their evidence.
Okay, then never mind. I don't need it.
Or I guess okay, like the evidence indictment was a part that it's about like the perception. Like it's literally just like if you like read it, like it talks
Okay.
about the perception, doesn't mention its actual law.
Gotcha. Thank you. Alrighty, I have the decision.
Monica just ran to the bathroom. Should be right back.
Take your time.
Okay, she's back, and we are, I think, ready to go.
Neo, just you're here, right? Just so that we can announce this expeditiously.
Oh yeah, my bad. I thought you were talking about my phone.
Okay, you're good. Congratulations to you making it to quarters at TOC. That's a very big deal. You should all be very proud of yourselves. This is a hard tournament, all that jazz. Great job. With that being said, it is a 2-1 decision for the neg. I squirreled, so I can go first. So I start on weighing. I think that both sides are doing a pretty good job here. Where I ultimately adjudicate is that I think that Brentwood does not link authoritarianism to genocide. And so that just puts them like a step behind on the weighing debate. So I start by evaluating Lambert's arguments about genocide. The argument is extended well, and most of the defense, actually all of the defense that Brentwood has on it is predicated on the like prereqs and short circuits that lead to authoritarianism before Japan can become like a good counterbalance to China. All of this is predicated on y'all winning your like case arguments or your various other offensive arguments. So I have to go evaluate those. Regardless of the stuff about needing a 2/3 vote to do anything, which I don't know if it was over time. But anyway, regardless of that, I do have within time evidence about the like Kamino, Komoda, whatever, the centrist party of Japan being necessary for an LDP victory and serving as a check back to the authoritarian spiral. While I do believe that as per the Sterling evidence, fiat does mean that every single amendment in the Constitution gets changed instantly, I think that all of these amendments get changed within the context of there being a centrist party there to check back against them, meaning I don't buy that there's any sort of like instant flashbang turn to authoritarianism. With this, I feel comfy voting on Lambert's case. On aid, there's really no warrant extended in the back half as for why incentive to use soft power goes away. I don't think the Civil War turn is warranted enough, and I also just don't think it makes sense, like as exemplified by the US's Gen 6 riots. Riots do not instantly lead to authoritarianism, and so I have a very, very hard time buying the Civil War argument. Great round. I was super impressed.
Neil, you okay if I go next?
Yeah, that's fine.
Okay. I kind of completely disagree with that. I think that I'll start on foreign aid. I think the foreign aid argument is sufficient defense and implicated as such. It's literally not responded to out of summary. As such, you literally only respond to the impact scenario. I'm not going to buy the new second final focus response. It's implicated as defense to your case in summary. It's implicated as defense to your case in final focus. Even if it's not defense, I'm not going to make that intervention to say that it doesn't take out your case. And also, I think your case extension is like, I'm not going to say incoherent in the back half, but it just doesn't there's just like not warranting sufficiently done in the back half. I think there's enough risk that the soft power means that there's no deterrent and no like cooperation, which probably means that there's not going to have this impact happen, or not going to have like the genocide spillover, which is probably a reason to negate on risk of offense alone. And then on the revision spiral argument, I do think that every single response, even the 2/3 thing, is over time, even in rebuttal. I also think that the only thing I have that I'm flowing in the round on this response is the authoritarianism weighing that's done in summary. I think they sufficiently respond to this. And I also think that the Komeito evidence isn't implicated to the revision spiral. It would have been smart if you implicated to revision spiral, but it's never directly implicated to revision spiral. I'm not going to do that implication for you. I also think that this argument does control the internal link into authoritarianism, which they don't need to make the argument that Japan is a model for genocide, because your argument in summary is explicitly that authoritarianism spills over. Even if you nuance specifically that it is China, I don't think it matters, because they argue with their like evidence that's like every single threat to global stability stems from authoritarianism, which probably is an indication to me that all of these models are spilling over around the world, which definitely outweighs Laos, Cambodia, and Myanmar. On your case specifically, yeah, sure, the Civil War turn probably isn't good enough for me to vote on. And I think that the like backlash turn also probably isn't warranted enough in the back half for me to vote on, but I don't think that really matters, because I think whoever controls the internal link into authoritarianism wins the round. And I think that they're doing that pretty cleanly on revision spiral. And if I do take into account the responses, I think that even if you're reading this 2/3 response, I think their response kind of just like this Sterling evidence kind of just like preempts this, because it says they would instantly need to revise everything. So it doesn't matter if like they need 2/3, because it just has to happen instantaneously because they're all interconnected. I don't really get a real response on that unique warranting. So I'm not gonna like pull the trigger on this potential 2/3 defense. I think that there's so much more of a risk of offense for them, and that's why I negate.
All right, so I pretty much agree with everything Charlie said. So I'm gonna go pretty quickly. First, in the Civil War turn, I feel like it's a wash. I mean, Civil War, like I didn't really evaluate either side at the end of the round. So I'm just going to move on to revision spiral. So I feel like the majority of the issues in this round stem like all the way from rebuttal on revision spiral. Again, same as Charlie, I think that every response to revision spiral was over time. The only response that I have like standing at the end of the round that I could like almost evaluate is the 2/3 like majority vote needed. However, that was also over time. So revision spiral pretty much flows cleanly through. On weighing, I like the prereq weighing that they do, saying that like authoritarianism is a prereq to like genocide is sufficient enough to link into that weighing. So the weighing debate pretty much doesn't matter at that point. And I mean, yeah, that's pretty much it, because I don't want to repeat everything Charlie said.
Any debaters' questions for anyone?
No, thank you so much for all your feedback, and good round, Lambert.
Thank you.
Real quick, Sully, please win. Thank you.
Oh,
I will
will
be
do.
upset
We'll
and
try,
I'm
we'll try our
five
best.
So
Thank y'all.
All right, thank you.